is, are you ready?
No, no, I'm not. Oddly enough, I am not prepared for this morning's Bible study.
Excellent.
Fun.
Somehow I lost this week. But it's actually fine because we have the Anglican congregation who's been every once in a while with us, who worshipped here on Easter. They're actually coming in to worship today because they're the St. Barnabas Anglican Church, and today is St. Barnabas Day.
Who was St. Barnabas?
You know, one of them saints.
He ran around with them all.
Yeah, he was with the missionary on the missionary journeys. Yeah, Barney. Everyone knows Barney. So it's kind of their day. So I'm like, yeah. Of course, the funny thing is that when did they ask me? Last Monday morning. Didn't get back to them because I was like, oh, world blew up. But so anyway, they'll be doing that, and then I offered the conference room for their fellowship time. So it works out great since I don't have a lot prepared for today. So this will be a shorter Bible study. So we have room to time to put a table up or something, and we're good to go. But yeah, there's plenty we could talk about in these texts.
Pretty new car.
What's that?
I says it's a pretty new car.
It is a pretty new van. Yes. Yes. I convinced Heather that we can take our time to find a new van.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
What does God say? My ways are not your ways. My time is not your time. Same thing for marriage. So, you know what? Let's read Matthew, Holy Gospel. Matthew's good.
The long one.
You don't have to read all of it, I guess. It goes quick.
Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had a compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." And he called to him his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every disease and every affliction. The names of the 12 apostles are these: first Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanian, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out, instructing them, "Go nowhere among the Gentiles, and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And proclaim as you go, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You received without paying, give without pay. Acquire no gold, nor silver, nor copper for your belts, no bag for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor a staff, for the laborer deserves his food. And whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it, and stay there until you depart. As you enter the house, greet it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to it. And if anyone will not receive you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet when you leave that house or town. Truly I say to you, it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town. Behold, I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, so be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of men, for they will deliver you over to courts and flog you in their synagogues, and you will be dragged before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them and the Gentiles. When they deliver you over, do not be anxious how you are to speak or what you are to say, for what you are to say will be given to you in that hour. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you.
All right, thank you.
And I think I would have said, okay, I quit. They didn't. It doesn't paint a pretty picture.
No, it does not. Not at all. Yeah, it's not a cherry assignment. So this has nothing to bear with anything we'll talk about necessarily, but just FYI, Canaan is a zealot. Was a particular branch of very radicalized group of Jews who were against Roman oppression. So Simon the Zealot, it usually is what we hear him called. Simon the Zealot, Simon the Anarchist. It's an odd bunch that he calls. You know, he's got a couple fishermen, or 4 fishermen actually, 2 of which run a business. So prominent small business owners, but you know, kind of common folk. A tax collector. We're going to talk about him today in the sermon. Tax collectors are no good. You got a zealot. Gotta have the wild card, right? It's not going to be any fun unless you got somebody who's just always on edge. But yeah, Simon is he's out there. And then you got Judas, who, you know, later John will call him a thief. Now whether that's kind of painting him in that light because of what he does, or just, you know, Judas, you know, just he doesn't get a good look. So an interesting bunch of people. We don't really know what the other guys do, or did rather. But he calls them. Now the fun thing, and this isn't even what I was interested in talking about, this part. But this is one of those fun little sections where we can't decide who it's talking to. And what I mean by that is, okay, well, so what Jesus says here and all the directions that he says and everything he says, is he talking to the 12? Or is he talking to us?
Both.
Yeah, and that's what gets hard because it's not all both. You know, why I point this out is it's in the context of these 12 Jesus sent out, instructing them. So I mean, he is talking to them. Right. This is what you're going to do. All right, go. Here's the thing: go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Mm-hmm. See, now he's definitely talking to them.
Right.
Context. Now that part, does that apply to us? Is Jesus telling us, go nowhere amongst Gentiles, but, you know, evangelize the Jews only?
That'd be tough because we're Gentiles.
Well, technically, yes. Yeah. So I mean, that's clearly not the case now. You know, we don't look at this text and say, okay, well, this is what Jesus says out of Jesus' mouth. We are to go, boom, do that. So it's like, okay, he's definitely talking to them. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out demons. Now it's like, ooh, well, he's not talking to us because he's not giving us the power to do these things. And he does give them, you know, he called him his 12 disciples, so these apostles, right? He gave them authority over unclean spirits. He gave them the authority to do these things. So still talking to them. So we're like, okay, acquire no gold or silver nor copper for your belts. Well, I'm out because I get a paycheck. No bag for your journey. I like stuff. No two tunics, nor sandals, nor staff. No, nor sandal. I got a whole thing of shoes in my office, so I'm out. So, you know, this is clearly talking about them. Okay, yada yada. Truly I say to you. Okay. Now it kind of shifts. Behold, I'm sending you as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be as wise as serpents, innocent as doves. Beware of men, for they will deliver you over to the courts and flog you in their synagogues. Now, even for that's like, well, do we have to worry about being dragged into the synagogues to be flogged? Well, no. Now the courts, we might, you know, based on where things are going these days, you know, what's considered hate speech, you know, it's trending that way. So, okay, maybe this has some application for us. When they deliver you over, do not be anxious how you are to speak. See, and this is where things turn, and where we take like verse 19, and we always proclaim this is all about us. Yes. Well, not all about us, but this is the one that we hit. Like, we tell everybody, don't be anxious. What you're to say, it will be given to you in that hour. And so we turn and say, yes, now it's speaking directly to us. But it is a little fuzzy here. And you got to keep it within its context. And so, you know, is it speaking primarily to them? Yeah. Now, is it speaking something to us too? Yeah. I mean, we can glean stuff from this. Like, you know, yeah, we are sent out, definitely in a different way. than this. This is for that time before the crucifixion, before Pentecost. So things do change on Pentecost. But you can't just go immediately. This is why we always pay attention to the context, because especially at the very beginning, this is where we get weird stuff of like faith healers and like, well, no, I can handle snakes. It says so, and Jesus said I could, and I can heal your leg by touching it, because look, he said we could. It's like, he said they could, not you. So that's always an area where we want to be careful. But like I said, that wasn't even the thing I was kind of interested in. I like the first, verses 35 through 38 there. There we go. So the end of Matthew chapter 9. So he's going about, what's he doing? He's what?
Teaching in their synagogue,
Teaching.
proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, healing every disease and every affliction.
Right, yeah, he's doing it all. And then he sees the crowds, and he has what? He has compassion. And I didn't have time to look it up, but I'm assuming it's that gut-wrenching Schwachnitzomai compassion that Jesus always has. So he has compassion for them. He sees them because they were harassed and helpless, like a sheep without a shepherd. And this is kind of the interesting thing. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. What does he tell them to do? Like, in this immediate context of that chapter, does he say, now go and do something about them? Or what does he say? Well, he tells them to do something, but is it go and attend to them?
Pray.
Pray. Interesting, because he's got disciples, right? He said to his disciples, these are the ones following him.
But this might not be exactly chronological either.
True.
This might be 2 weeks before, a month before.
It could be.
Because this isn't exactly, Matthew's gospel is not always exactly linear, it's specifically arranged.
Very, very true.
So we can't look at it like that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But he also, but he doesn't say go. He's
Not
got
yet,
disciples,
because
right?
Maybe that was a month before, and
Right.
maybe he didn't decide yet.
But even, actually that kind of, where's my pen? Even kind of underscoring that, so you can even draw a line between the chapter breaks are
I
not
know there's no
divinely
chapter break.
inspired.
I know, but that's
The
helpful. In
tradition, our the church
right.
has decided that there's a chapter break there, and
That's a good idea.
it's not bad, absolutely. And even when you look at like chapter 10 there, verses 1 through 4, which kind of says, and he called to him his 12 disciples. Okay, well, is that? Are we saying he called them, or he called them to him? Like, hey, come here, guys, I'm sending you out. Okay, so it's not exactly clear. And then he says, okay, well, here's what these 12 Jesus sent out. So there is a break here between what Jesus says here and the sending. We get literally a chapter break here. So it's interesting that you point out that like these can't not necessarily chronological, not necessarily like these are happening boom ba-dum ba-dum ba-dum. So if you take that just in of itself, it's interesting just that Jesus says pray, and he's already doing stuff. But so he turns to his disciples. Now you can say, well, is it the 12? Is it all of them?
Well, that's the, I have a little at my house Bible study with some friends, and we looked at every parallel passage of Jesus giving orders versus the disciples versus the apostles when it came to healing and sending them out. And the apostles in every context have a level up
Oh yeah.
than the regular old disciples, which could
Right.
be hundreds, which could be,
Could be,
the
absolutely.
72, which could be, 300 today,
Right.
So he might have been speaking just to the disciples, as in the big group, and then taking aside his chosen apostles.
Right. So you could
For
kind
this
of do this
commission.
whole like, you've got
So it's not for everyone.
the disciples and the apostles. Sometimes he speaks to these guys.
Right.
Sometimes he's speaking to these guys, and sometimes he's speaking to that. And it's not exactly clear. And here in Matthew, it's not clear because he talks about, he said to his disciples, and he called to him his 12 disciples and gave them authority. And see, if you read it kind of like, well, they're all one group, it's like, well, so he only had 12.
Does it say disciples in chapter 10? Oh yeah, 12 disciples.
Yeah.
But that the 12 designates which ones they are.
Right. But this is
There's 12 apostles right after it.
Yeah, interchangeable, I guess.
yes.
Okay.
That's the fun part about this. Is like it's
But if
very
you pay
there- there's
attention when you're reading,
there's a little bit
figure
of-
it out.
there's a little bit of play there going there, but just that initially, he says pray. Don't go. Later he'll tell the 12 go. And if he's talking to all the disciples, or even either all these guys or even these guys initially, he doesn't tell them to go. Later he'll tell these guys to go. But he says pray that they're workers, and the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And we can look at that and say, okay, he wants them to pray. Like, he doesn't initially just say, everybody go out and do this stuff. And kind of what we would see in this is sort of this seek ye first the kingdom of God. Seek God's will in this. You kind of can go to even Garden of Gethsemane, where he's like, not my will, but thy will be done. That if they could see, Jesus sees what's going on with the people, and he has compassion. And like, oh, if only everybody had that compassion, then they would see and they would do. And there is kind of a sense of, Jesus has a way of doing things. Jesus has things under control, and he's guiding the way here. So he tells them to pray about it. He doesn't just like send everybody out and say, well, okay, take care of everybody. Everybody love one another. He's like, pray that God would pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send laborers into the harvest. Pray that God's will be done in this. Pray that God will have his hand on this and take care of you. And if you see how this plays out also with the disciples, even the ones who are sent out, when they start seeing things happen and like, hey, we did these awesome things, we're great. And they start getting kind of puffed up about it. And they start saying things like, hey, can we sit on your right hand and one on your left? Who's the greatest among us? And, and hey, we saw some other guys who were prophesying, should we cast down fire on them? Because they're not of us. They start taking it in the weird places when they kind of focus back on themselves. So just this God or Jesus saying, pray that God would deliver workers. And it's fun because pray that God would deliver workers. Well, God's delivered Jesus. He's right there. I mean, who's the one who could actually deal with all of this? Who is the one shepherd? They're sheep without a shepherd. They're harassed and helpless. Who's the one who can deliver them from that?
Right, but he can't be in 5 places at once
Christ.
in his human form. So you
True.
obviously need multiple.
Yeah.
If your time is short,
Sure.
you need multiple helpers.
But even then, it's like, okay, but pray first. Go to God. Pray that God would send someone to deliver. So not just in the sense of, send me some helpers, kind of like the Moses.
Right, but
I
you
need helpers to deal with these people.
But you can't shock the people all at once. If you read it, he's gently easing the larger crowds into what is happening. Do you
Possibly.
see what I'm saying?
Possibly.
It's not like everything you knew was wrong. He gently guides the larger crowds and says to his 12 or says to the ones closest to him
Sure.
more bold statements until the crucifixion and resurrection.
Well, and even
That's when he appears to multitudes, you know what I mean, as
Right.
the proof. positive.
as you get closer and closer to this, and let's talk about this being today. And what do you say? Pray that God's will be done. Let's do with that. And so gently leading them to that. Always pray that God's will be done. Pray that God's will be done. He's talking about ultimately God's will is done here. And we understand why, because at some point, you get the feeding of the 5,000. What happens there is the people, they want to take him and make him king right then and there. Like they say, hey, you're the guy. We know now. You're the one. You fed us. You're awesome. Now we want you to be king. Why?
Because that's what they thought it was supposed to be.
Because they were fed.
Right, but that's what their expectation was.
Right.
Messianic expectation.
And so he's trying to get them away from focusing on, here's their expectation. Put that down.
Right, what they've been taught. It's not their fault.
And the right expectation.
Right.
Tempting. All right. So yeah, I mean, but this is what he's doing.
Right.
He's trying to get them out of this and into this.
That's why he's so angry with the Pharisees all the time, because they taught everyone wrong.
And then how this applies to us, I mean, various, many ways. We can apply this in all sorts of fun ways to us. Our expectations of how things should be, how things go versus the right expectation, how we, our ways of seeing things, and we don't always seek God's will in all things first. Even with the mission and ministry festival that we just had, and we're working through, what ministry ideas do we have? We might have a lot of good ideas, but if we don't seek God's will in this, if we don't pray and go to Him and say, hey, we want to do all sorts of good stuff. We can't. We can't do all sorts of good stuff. We can do the things we can do. Okay? We should pray about this and seek God's guidance in all this and say, okay, well, what is it that God has placed us here in this place, in this time to do? We have a lot of desires and expectations. Are they our desires? Are they our expectations? Or are they God's? Are they God's? And that's kind of a big deal.
Do you think Christ might be preparing the disciples for the future when he won't be here anymore?
Oh, he's always preparing. Sure.
Right.
Oh, totally. I mean, everything that he's doing. I mean, to be fair, I shouldn't say he's not just preparing them for the cross. I mean, this is kind of the pivotal moment where everything is kind of ultimately, brings to fruition. But I mean, onward, certainly with, resurrection, ascension, Pentecost. Yeah, there we go. Getting ready for all.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think also he's telling them, you're gonna do this. This is gonna happen to you also. You're gonna be dragged before kings and flogged and
Well, yeah, he's warning them that, our expectations and our plans are usually world-based. And in that view, we're going to, everything we do is successful. I like failing when we do stuff like ministries and whatnot. Not that I like it, but I don't mind it so much because I think we come to the conclusion that everything we do at church, every ministry is going to be an awesome success because God is with us and we want to do good. And so, yes, it's going to be a success. And that puts a lot of pressure. And so when things don't go right or when they fail, we usually take it really hard. Like, oh, wow, this is really a really big, gut punch. When I got here, there was kind of the vibe I kind of got was sort of still a mourning for what happened years and years and years ago. I remember, I don't know who I talked to, a couple people. It wasn't just from one person, but still this kind of feeling looking at like St. Luke's and like, look, they're thriving, they're prospering, they're growing, and we're not. We don't have a lot of kids. We don't have, we're not doing a lot of stuff like we used to do. And kind of a hurt because, well, a lot of our people are now over there, and just a very much like a feeling of like we failed. This is bad. And like, well, look at us right now. I mean, it's a different scenario. Failing is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, the cross looks like failure.
Yeah, but the resurrection should have a bigger R because,
Oh yeah, no, I understand.
that was
Likes
the
to write
truth.
small.
It goes on. If I make it bigger, then it just looks like I wrote trap, and I don't want. That's gonna. I don't want to have to explain that one. It's a trap. But yeah, it's like, you should be prepared to be brought up, cast out.
Well, not
Whatever.
all people get to experience that lovely joy.
Yeah. But they should be, they should,
But it
Not
is
everybody
still
will,
applicable to people.
but it
because-
should always be in the back of your head, like, hey, this is the way it should be. In fact, the fact that you said that not everybody, that is a unusual blessing that we have in this country right now.
Well, I've experienced.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking like,
there are people. Who
I'm thinking
will.
like Christians in the Middle East.
Right. But even Christians here do experience that, especially if they come from a different
Yeah.
group that's not secular or atheist or
Right.
Christian, and then they're like, you can't come around us ever again, and
Yeah.
we all hate you, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it definitely rises to a level that we should be aware of. It rises to an even greater level across the world, where you're not just being shunned, you're being,
Right,
like,
of course.
sorry, you can't even come back to your home ever
Right,
again.
of course.
So yeah, there's always that. We should always expect that, hey, when things go well, this is like, wow, this is this is not necessarily what we should always expect. But yeah, he's preparing them for all this stuff. So all we should really, when we engage in ministry, when we go out evangelizing the people, is just pray that God's will be done. Who was I talking to? I don't know. Just about wanting somebody to like come to faith, and just like, oh, I try so hard and I try so hard and I want everything, and I want them to see how beautiful it is, and it's like, you know what? Just pray that God's will be done. He's the one who does this, not you.
Right, because you're just joining him, and they're on a timeline of salvation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
You're just helping.
that text right there is good for people who are like, I just want to. Why is it not working? I just want to. It's like, wait, pray. Pray therefore earnestly to the Lord of the harvest, send out laborers into his harvest. Pray to God that his will be done in this. And then the second part of that is, and pray that you are happy with that. Pray for contentment. Because God, maybe it's not his will that one person comes to faith. Maybe it's not his will that whatever. After this last week, I'm very much in the mode of, hey, you know what? God's in control, and you just never know. Just be happy with what you have.
But it could be his will, right? God desires that all be saved.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, and
You don't wanna slip
the
into Calvinism.
absolutely.
Because you almost went there.
That's the joy that we have. It's like, you know what? I don't know. Maybe that is his will, but I don't understand it. And from my perspective, it's like, well, that person is not saved right now. I don't know. God's got a whole bunch of stuff going on that's beyond me. And he's not using me for everything here.
You just have to pray that person's receptive. You know what I mean? Because it's their, they're going to accept or deny at whatever point in history of their timeline. They're going to accept or deny. But it is God's will that everyone be saved, as clearly stated.
Yeah, the fun thing that we do is, as Lutherans, as opposed to Calvinists, double predestinationists, all this other stuff, is that, we could, I guess the Lutheran could be shown exactly like, okay, pretend you're there on Judgment Day and you see God's book, and it's like, and you see that these are all the names written who are saved, these are all the names written, and because now all fulfillment of time has happened, all right, great. So you know that, and a Lutheran says, okay, all these people on the no list, I'm going to go proclaim the word to them.
You're gonna go up and
Right.
Proclaim the word to them.
Oh.
And pray that God has mercy and saves them. Because we know God hasn't condemned anybody. God, desires everybody to be saved. So we just like, you know what? I don't know what the plan is. I just know I'm praying to God that this is his will, and I'm going to share the gospel, and cool. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to worry about all this other stuff. I compassion on the people. Yes, do it. Do what you can. Pray to God. Pray that God's will be done in all this stuff. Like I said, I've been on a very heavy, this is God's will, this, hey, let's be joyous for everything that we have, and God will watch over us. That's been my week. So maybe that's coloring where I'm going here. Any thoughts or comments? We got a little bit of time.
Well, this thing about poverty for the guys, don't get 2 coats, keep it down to 1,
Mm-hmm.
don't collect money, and you think of those. That argument has been used when it comes to negotiating salaries sometimes.
Oh yeah, sure.
Pastor's not supposed to have a big car, pastor's not supposed to.
Hey, don't worry. I don't.
I'm always dubious of religious workers who live in luxury.
Well, there's a guy named Pastor Joshua
Servant
out
of the
east
Lord,
that
not
was
one to.
doing it more for the money than for the.
Yeah, and I mean it's a
Billy Graham with his alligator shoes, just kind of worry about that.
One of my
But then are they they're not, I mean, alligator shoes, you're serving manna. You know what I mean? Like,
it's one of those things where it's hard. I mean, if somebody has the means, we never begrudge anybody. Like, hey, if you have, now of course we say, well, you could, why didn't you spend that on something? But
Well,
whatever.
yeah. In the Florida Keys, there's this big boat that says Fishers of Men. And I go, wow, they're really
Yeah.
breaking it in. They can afford that boat and that house on the key, and okay, whatever.
Yeah. One of my seminary professors said that every pastor should have what do you call it? Well, the robes we have are called albs. And he said, what was the word? He said, every pastor needs a disreputable alb, which means one that's just kind of yellowy, kind of
That's
dingy, sort of like, weathered, just to kind of remind you that, hey, this is what you deserve. Like, you shouldn't, don't seek out the nicer things. His heart was, I understand where he was going with it. But yeah, it is kind of, when you see pastors, clergy, whatever, living pretty high on the hog like that, it's like, yeah, that's not what we're called
But
to.
we don't want you to starve either.
Don't worry.
but there is a big difference between starving and, excessiveness, because
Right.
then the excessiveness means that there's an emphasis on material worldly goods, which means the focus is not on God.
Right.
And you want your leader to be focused on God first, and not the alligator shoes or the most expensive car or the fanciest suit. Like,
The things of this world.
They're
that's
green, but they're
right.
not made of
It
alligators.
shows you that it's not, the first commandment is just not being followed, because
Those
the
Michael
idol
Jordans
is
have
the
it.
star.
Those
I
are Converse.
mean, I know that's kind of extreme, but I mean,
In my
Think
defense, these were
about it,
cheap
like-
when I was
Or
young.
the priest who embezzled thousands from the church.
right. I mean, every day I think about that to myself, like, oh, I really like, and I'm not even like that materialistic in comparison to, the world, but you've got to think about, like, is this my idol for the day? You know what I mean? This shouldn't be my idol. Do I need that? Can I do it in a more
Oh, yeah.
frugal way?
Think about Judas.
Yeah, we could always be more frugal with, we could
You
always
know,
go without.
I mean, that's what,
Shoot, even just a simple practice of fasting. Is fasting a good thing? Depends.
says so.
It's good if it gets you to focus, like you said, on first commandment stuff.
If it comes from the heart.
Yeah. If it's like, you know what, I'm refocusing my time on God.
Right.
By taking this thing away, I'm acknowledging I don't need.
But it says
this.
fasting and prayer.
Oh yeah,
Prayer and
sure,
prayer.
absolutely.
Not just fasting.
But this is why it's fasting is a good practice, and if we were really fun, we'd bring it back, because we could always be more. There's always stuff that we could do without.
It's not just
As
food
much as I hate
either.
to say it, I don't need this. Well, maybe next Sunday I won't get one, and you can be the
Why not
judge.
just use your coffee machine at home?
What? Oh, because I don't do I don't drink coffee. It's like, and I don't like coffee. I like all the other stuff in the.
You can get one of those fancy machines, and then if you calculate your yearly spending and then the size of the machine, you save like a ton of money for yourself.
We've
It's like a fancy machine.
in theory that works, but I also know myself and ourselves, and if we got a nice fun gadget that would be like, this does it all, and we'd use it once and then be like, oh, but it's such a pain. It's so much easier to just, and then I justify by
We
saying,
have 4 kids. One of them can work at Big B.
well, I've got,
They can come home and make the coffee.
it's my outreach. I'm putting
Hallelujah.
I'm putting baristas through college. I am serving my community. I am giving them jobs. That's my outreach. By the way, the coupon thing is still there. But yeah, I'm not sure. I got way off the rails
That's really
there.
not coffee, is it?
What's that?
It's really not coffee, it's just.
Oh, hard. Yeah, it's
Instead of
that much
in
coffee,
it.
and then it's milk and sugar and.
Whipped cream.
I don't do
flavored.
whipped cream.
Oh, okay.
This was a marshmallow raspberry though.
Oh, all right.
Usually I get mocha, so this is a little fun treat for me. All right, I'm not sure I can bring myself back out of this. So I think we said some good things, and we've got time enough to kind of rearrange some stuff. So I think we'll call it a morning.
Use the rest.
And I promise I will be better prepared. Well, God willing, I'll be better prepared next week.
There you go.
It's more fun when you're not.
Oh my gosh, it's not fun to get there. Trust me. Thank you, everybody online.
It's like a